and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
From the Matrix Home Solutions studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning after Fredo was told to get in the boat by Jeff Zucker earlier this week, suspended indefinitely from CNN. He went on his this radio show apparently he has on Sirius and had this to say about how difficult this is.
You know this already. It hurts to even say it. It's embarrassing. But I understand it. And I understand why some people feel the way they do about what I did. I've apologized in the past. I mean it. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do was compromise any of my colleagues and do anything but help. I know they have a process that they think is important. I respect that process. So I'm not going to talk about this any more than that.
Stiff upper lip, Fredo. Stiff upper lip.
And the podcast is good. Let's get on it.
That's
the title of his podcast.
Last thing he wanted to do was compromise any of his colleagues. So surely that was at the forefront of his mind as he was running crisis comms for his brother. Don't think so. Don't buy it. For more on the topic, please be joined by Grace Curley, the host of the Grace Curley Show on WRKO 680 in Boston. She's the executive producer of the Howie Carr Show, that is, and columnist for the Boston Herald as well. Grace, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're closer to Andrew Cuomo than we are, thankfully, for us. So how did you read this whole saga, and will he have a Spitzer-like rise from the ashes and be on MSNBC in 4 weeks?
My heart says no, we will never see him again. My brain says, of course he'll be back. Why not? Give him a couple weeks. But I really think that listening to that monologue that he gave, it's like these people learn nothing. Drop the sanctimony, drop the fake sincerity, drop the crybaby act. We're all sick of it. You've been doing it for years and getting away with it. No one's buying it anymore. That's all I want from people is just be honest about who you are. And that was something I really liked about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, not everybody liked him, but he didn't pretend to be this saintly figure who was going to morally lecture you on why certain things are good, certain things are bad. Chris Cuomo's entire shtick for the last decade has been telling people why he's good and they should listen to him and he's a good person. And that's all he had to offer. And now that the credibility for that is completely done.
Well, he also, too, thought that he wasn't going to get caught. I mean, he told Jeff Zucker and everybody, I'm talking to my brother as a brother. But when you look at what he did, I mean, he was calling newsrooms to find out, hey, what are you doing tonight on my brother? What victim are you, what your alleged victim? He dug into that, and then he even dug into one of the alleged victims' past, and she did something nefarious in college, and he wanted to blow that up to make her look bad.
Yeah, he was running Oppo research, and it's pretty ironic when you think about how CNN and Chris Cuomo covered the Christine Blasey Ford stuff and how we had to believe all women, and then he's trying to discredit a victim of sexual harassment. I mean, the wedding girl, as he called her, her picture was on the cover of the New York Post with Andrew Cuomo's big hands wrapped around her face, and this is what Chris Cuomo is spending his time just totally crosses the line. And listen, I get the idea that you put family before business. I really do. I understand that. But this went a step too far. This was being a vile person and trying to discredit people who were just trying to make their voices heard. If he really cared that much, he would have said, you know what, I have to support my brother. I'm stepping aside. I'm gonna take some time off. But he didn't do that.
Well,
he
right.
took a risk losing a $6 million paycheck.
That's the key point is that this paragon of virtue, so he tells us, turns out to be not man enough to be honest about what he's doing. Now, but there's a parallel to his brother Andy there, and that is they became too much of a burden for those in their circle. So Andrew Cuomo served his purpose. Then he became too much of a burden. Democrat socialists had to exit him stage left, and then it's time for Letitia James and others. Same thing with Andrew Cuomo, because if not, then who has to do all the explaining? Jeff Zucker.
Right, and when I was reading, just random quotes from sources at CNN, Jeff Zucker, that was what it seemed to me like was beyond CNN being embarrassed. We clearly know they're not embarrassed by any of their journalists. They had Jeffrey Toobin reporting on Chris Cuomo, or he at least was in the panel the night it happened. No one seems to understand. It's like they have as much self-awareness as Michael Scott from The Office. It really blows my mind. But Jeff Zucker, I guess his ego was bruised. I guess he felt like he had been lied to by Chris Cuomo, and that was the straw that
I don't believe that.
Back.
I think that's a cover story. I believe Jeff Zucker, of course, he's not an unsophisticated guy. Of course he knew what was going on behind the scenes with that shtick that they were doing on Fredo's show, he and his brother. But he has to localize the damage, and localizing it is holding Chris Cuomo to account, even if Zucker was turning a knowing blind eye.
Yeah, and you know what, though? You bring up a really great point, because something I saw a lot of people commenting on social media was, this is not Chris Cuomo's issue. This is the media's issue. They all behave like this. And there was a really interesting part of the text messages that we saw over the past week was when someone who was on Team Cuomo, I'm blanking on her name, I think it was Liz Smith, maybe. Yeah. She was bragging to the other staffers that Katie Tur was reading her talking points verbatim on TV.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And Katie Tur,
on MSNBC.
Yeah, this is another one. Katie Tur should also be gone, because she purports to be a part of the hard news division over at NBC, and she was cutting and pasting exactly what she got from Liz Smith. Beckett Adams had a good op-ed on this at the Washington Examiner, laying it all out. So again, there should be focus everywhere, and all those people, of course, are putting focus on Chris Cuomo because it takes focus off of them.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And like you said, it's a scapegoat thing. We've seen this before. When someone loses, if you're going to do more damage to the Democrats than you're going to help, they'll cut you loose. And it's all these people that at one point were their heroes. Chris Cuomo emerged into the basement. Andrew Cuomo was going to be our next president. He was America's boyfriend. Michael Avenatti. It's all these people who I thought were going to be our president. And now they have such a fall from grace. And what the media does is they act like, oh, this is a one-off. Oh, I can't believe this happened. Oh, shame on that person. When really they are supporting this, and they're creating this environment that allows these people to rise to the top.
Well, I mean, do you really think that he's not going to be, he's suspended, but what chances do you think he has of coming back? Because I think Jeff Zucker is going to hire him back. Or not hire him back, but let him come back to his job.
I do too, and it's actually interesting you say that, because Brian Stelter had said that he'll be back as soon as January. Yeah. And my question is, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, so he gets to take the month of December off.
Who doesn't want the month of December off?
It seems like a good deal to me.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like a good deal. He can go on vacation with his family. He can spend Christmas with his family, and then he gets to come back and get his job. I mean, what's not to love? And that's what seems to happen. This isn't a punishment if that's the case. But if that's what Brian Stelter's saying, I don't know. But then I also was reading stuff that a lot of people at CNN are gunning for that time slot. So that could also be another interesting dynamic.
Something that Fredo said in his interview with New York State investigators about his brother's matters that was memorialized in the transcript that was released. He said, "There is no division between politics and media. We all know each other." I thought that's such an interesting statement. So is it state-run media, or is it a media-run state? I suppose you can take your pick.
Yeah, and I think you see this every day with Jen Psaki. I'm always amazed that she can never take a question without saying to the reporter, well, you know me, Janet. Well, you're very aware, Brett. You've been here a long time, too. It's like this clique of people that some of them are reporters, some of them work at CNN, some of them work at the White House, and it just goes around and around like a merry-go-round. And it just shows that there's this group of elite that are allowed to have the information, and they follow the science, and they can do whatever they want, and they control the narrative, and the rest of us are just supposed to nod our heads and go along with it. And I think that if Trump did anything in his 4 years, he really did expose how swampy and corrupt these people are.
She is Grace Curley, host of The Grace Curley Show on WRKO 680 in Boston, executive producer of The Howie Carr Show, and columnist for the Boston Herald. Grace, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one.